Hello, Brian. Okay, thank you for kicking things off. You've been doing that just about every week of the class, so I really appreciate that. Good job. Okay, so I've got your compositions up here. Font assignment allowed me to explore different fonts and different orientations to find my best one for my thumbnail, and that's really what a typography is all about. It's really the art of communicating in a expeditious, effective, and attractive way. Um, Something that is both visual pleasing as well as provides a good solid message. So communicative value as well as visual attributes. So good job. All right, so let's jump over here. So I like this composition. I'm kind of glad you chose this one. And as I mentioned last week, to me, the fascinating thing about this assignment is the fact that you're kind of forcing the viewer to look through the foreground trees by adding that blur to them. And that's a really super interesting technique that really allows us to see what's going on behind the trees. There's some fallen trees down in there. And I think it just kind of points to this whole symbiotic nature of this symbiotic relationship of the trees with the land, as indicating that the trees kind of go back to the land. And I think that's really super fascinating. And again, a really interesting choice, blurring the foreground trees to force the viewer to look at the background. As far as your typographic treatments go, I think that each one of these is very interesting. But this is actually going to be kind of an easy one to recommend, and it just so happens that this is the most effective, but it also shows the best alignment. So it's not a matter of selecting this by default, but I will say that these two right here are employing center aligned type. And if there's something that you really want to remember about typography moving forward in your student career, is that center aligned typography is very, very rarely the most interesting solution. Often you see it on invitations, and a very like wedding invitation, something very formal. But in terms of communication, and what we've learned back from week 1 and week 2 is that center aligned elements create a symmetry around the negative space. And that symmetry doesn't add any visual interest. We see it here. We see it here. See how both sides are symmetrical. Both sides of the center alignment right here. We have even space on this side and on this side. So it's not really creating any visual interest. And again, we use that example back in the shapes exercise in weeks 1 and 2. Compare that to this negative space, this beautiful negative space right here, allowing us to see where you want us to look and allowing us to establish this really beautiful negative space around the type itself. This one I think is out because there's no typographic alignment at all in this particular, excuse me, in this particular layout. So this, I think, is your most interesting. Now, what I would recommend here is using 2 different typefaces here. It looks like you're using the same typeface for the headline and the subhead. Love the layout. Love the alignment. This kind of subhead right here is in perfect alignment with the A and the L. And that's an interesting choice. Really good job. Really establishing a nice, solid visual line right here that's acting as the left margin and really allowing and forcing the viewer to start into the typographic composition right here. And no problems. There's no problems. It is exactly apparent where you want the viewer to look first and second. So I think that's your answer right there. All right, great job. And again, my only recommendation at this point is to introduce a second typeface instead of using the same typeface for the headline and this subhead. Okay, good job. Any questions? Let me know. Thanks.